Dan Henk with another episode of Skull Sessions. And today our guest is Henry. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Henry?
No, thank you again for having me on here, Dan. I really appreciate the opportunity for this. My name is Henry Corrigan. I'm a horror author who just saw their debut novel, Man in Pieces. I shepherded that into the world, thankfully, through Darkstroke Books in July of last year. So we're coming up on about 10 months of it being out in the world. And it's been such a wild roller coaster in relation to me. I mean, because it's definitely been a lifelong dream of mine to become a published author. I've had a long, very passionate history with the horror genre. But I've written across a number of other genres. I have a number of novellas and short stories that are published on Amazon. My other works have been included in anthologies, whether it comes from erotica, science fiction, horror, poetry, and I actually also have a couple of children's books that I have written on that I've been shopping around for some time, but it's been only recently that I've started focusing really more on the horror genre because it is next to poetry, it is one of my earliest loves. So I have thanks again to Darkstroke Books, who were absolutely amazing in helping me shepherd my first novel, my debut, Man in Pieces, which is it blurs the line between horror and psychological thriller. And seeing that out in the world has been an absolute joy for me. So I can't thank them enough. They were a really supportive people, and they're a really supportive crew online.
Well, you said you've done some sci-fi. What do you think? And do you lean towards like a kind of space horror, like Event Horizon or Alien?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Would you prefer something like that to something more strictly horror related, like with some sci-fi? Like people say, even old school Frankenstein has a sci-fi element. I don't know if I agree, but I guess their calculations, anything involving technology is sci-fi.
Mm-hmm. No, I hear you, and I totally understand the point about Frankenstein. Some call it science fiction, some call it horror, and that's one of the great things about some of the really classic books. And I had mentioned about how A Man in Pieces blurs the line between horror and psychological thriller because it doesn't fit neatly into either category. And Frankenstein doesn't fit neatly into either category of either science fiction or horror itself, because the monster or the creature in Frankenstein is really the real heart and soul of the story, even though we don't actually really hear from him personally. We just hear
I
from
wouldn't
him
even
through.
call him. I wouldn't even call him a monster. I'm sympathetic. It's like this poor thing is tortured by everybody, and of course he lashes back.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. He's not a monster. He's not a creature. He is the heart and soul of the novel. And it's told through, unfortunately, his creator, his antagonist's point of view. And so it doesn't fit neatly against science fiction or horror, but it really encapsulates both. And that's, I think, one of its best selling points is that it draws people in regardless of what genre it is that they might be coming to it from, because that's I think it was Graham Masterton who had said that when it comes to writing, there really is no such thing as genre. There's definitely hallmarks that certain genres have. You have the locked room murder mysteries, you've got zombies, you've got meet cutes and the like. But at the end of the day, regardless of all of that, it's really just writing. It's all just literature. So if you approach it like that, that's why Frankenstein is such a seminal work, is because whether you have read the book, seen the movie, or heard about it, Frankenstein. You can quote from it, or when people are quoting from it. So and I think that's part of the reason that it has lasted as long as it has, is because it blends so many genres coming together, and it is such a heartfelt story, surprisingly heartfelt story.
Well, I think one of the big problems people have is, some people try and narrow down the genre, so they strictly stick to that genre. Like you have people that do horror where it's just gore all the time. There's not
Mhm.
really any story behind it. There's not really any. You're blinking it out.
I know. I don't know what caused that. There we go. I don't. Sorry about that.
It's a matrix. It's a matrix.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's like some screw up with the matrix, and like maybe your battery got disconnected, or
Yeah, I should check the back of my head. Yes, I
yeah.
know.
But no, it seems like the best stories have a little bit of adventure, a little bit of maybe sci-fi, a little bit of like psychological, horror, investigation, whatever. Like
Mhm.
I really love stuff like The Shining. The Shining. You can't just say it's just horror because there's a
No.
lot of stuff going on there. Where some stuff that's just like like I don't know, like probably like Maniac Cop. And
Mhm.
I'm not dogging on Maniac Cop,
No.
but because I know some people are huge fans of it, but that's more like straightforward horror.
Hmm. Yeah, totally. And that definitely speaks to the gore about the the point that you brought up before. I haven't seen Maniac Cop, I'll be perfectly honest, but the I actually we a writer I know online, Demon Max, he brought up the point that he was shepherding his own debut, which he just debuted a short story collection just recently, and he said I feel kind of bad, or I feel kind of like a little bit of an outcast because I call myself a horror writer, but I'm not really into extreme stuff. Like I don't really get into gore. I'm not really into the extreme, more like the flesh ripping and all these kinds of things. Mine is more like the psychological horror, the effects that it has on the characters. And he said, he was wondering if he was hamstringing himself by saying that because because it seems like, at least online, a lot of the more gore, the more extreme works get more play, essentially get talked about more online. And a bunch of us, myself included, rallied behind him, or basically said, it's like, look, you write what you write, whether it's a cozy mystery, hard science fiction, George R. Martin, incredibly detailed fantasy, or if it's or if it's a more of a psychological horror story, you write what you write. And regardless of whether it's what genre it sits in, because good writing is good writing, and it will pull people in regardless of where they are coming from. And yeah, go back to your point. There are a ton of people that stick to a certain genre, and I know when I was younger, and I think that maybe that was just because I was a know-it-all teenager at the time. I only really wanted to get into horror, but then you go to the bookstores, and when I was coming up, you go to the bookstores, you go to Barnes Noble, Borders, or even some of the few independent shops that were still open when I was coming up. You'd walk into the horror section, and it would be a handful of random authors on one shelf, King from top to bottom, Kuntz from top to bottom, and that would be it. There was really no margin. There was really nothing beyond that. So, or at least finding them in the bookstores at the time. So you really had to branch out into other genres and open yourself up to other stories to be able to find really good work and be able to grow as a writer yourself. I mean, the anxiety that, or the anxiety that the Demon Manx had talked about is the same thing that I ran into when I was writing A Man in Pieces, when I was querying it, when I was even after I had published it. The Because it's not a typical horror story. There's no demons, there's no monsters, there's no creatures or evil villains but it's at the same time it's not a typical thriller. Thrillers are usually about like the four S's really. You've got serial killers, stalkers, soldiers, or spies. So
Yeah, I've never heard that. The four S's.
yeah, it's those are the main, when you think of thrillers, those are the real things. Those are the main topics that you're talking about, or at least that's the ones that easily come to mind. Mine is it's a cubicle story. It's about two average men uh, both of them trapped in a dead end job in a cubicle farm. And one is a father to be, one is an aging veteran who happens to be his boss, and their company's downsizing. Both of them are desperate. Both of them have, either failing health or a new kid on the way and no other good options. And they're forced to basically battle each other for the last slot at this job that they hate. They absolutely hate it, but they can't live without it. And that's one of the things that I realized as I was writing it, that while I was also talking about a very personal story, because it is very personal to me. I put a lot of myself, a lot of my own nightmares into this book. But as I was finishing the story, I realized that I was also, while I was talking about the common nightmares of people, while I was talking about toxic masculinity, about, men being raised to be very stoic, about, not showing fear or anything beyond like anger or happiness. Really, that was how it was preached to me, or at least that was what I gleaned from it. I was also
That's my
talking
dad.
about,
Yeah, my dad's like super military, super conservative, super
Mhm.
religious. Like the most he will do is he'll shake your hand.
Yeah,
Like
exactly. Yeah.
I had brain cancer. I saw them a week later. I almost died. I had a 50-50 chance of making it. And he goes, "Hello, Daniel." Like he shakes my hand. Like that's his way of saying, no, like glad you survived. No,
Yeah,
like you're still with us. Yeah.
yeah,
But go
yeah.
ahead.
No, there's family members who are still with me who I swear there were multiple times in my life when I would swear that they only had two emotions in them. It was either they were either happy or they were blood boiling pissed off. So
Right.
that was it. There was no in between really.
Yeah, I
And
saw that a lot with my dad. Like when I was
mhm,
a teenage punk rocker, and I'd have like black eyeshadow on, and I have mohawk, and I
mhm.
just see that like disgust, like you're a horrid human being.
Yeah, yeah. No, I remember that. I mean, I remember I got that from my dad. I got that also, like, even just wearing my hat backwards drove my dad absolutely insane. He said, he's like, you look like the punks down the street and everything like that. He's like, I don't like that. And, and it's so the novel itself was really me talking about the toxic masculinity that I grew up with. I mean, you talked about, you mentioned like the hyper military. My dad was in the Navy. All of his brothers, my five uncles, were in some branch of the military. My grandfather on my mother's side was in the military during World War II. So even my stepfather was also in the Navy. So it's a lot of that military, that stoicism that you deal with. So there was, and especially, I mean, me coming up, it was only within the last year or two that I came out as bisexual, and it really was with the debut of my novel that the rest of my family found out about my bisexuality, that I really opened up to everyone that I knew. And so it's been that the novel talking about the stoicism, about not talking about, yeah, that essentially, that about not talking about not talking, really is it was the crux of it, is not admitting when you're breaking down, not admitting when talking about who you are, not talking about how much you're hurting or how much you feel disconnected from other people. And it was through the novel that I was able to talk about all of my nightmares, about really what I think a lot of people would consider to be really banal things. So you would talk about the sweating over the bills, sweating over the mortgage, sweating over your job, sweating over this, over that. And it's like I would wake up in the middle of the night from nightmares like every other night. And I realized after a while that just because something was banal or common didn't mean that it wasn't also insidious and it was malevolent. And I felt like a lot of people would connect with that, because through the toxic masculinity that I was talking about and the depression that I was living with at the time, and then I realized that I was also talking about the American dream as well. It all kind of connected in a strange way for me. And because I realized that while I was sweating over the bills and sweating over my kid and sweating over the mortgage and all of these things, that I was, struggling to basically, or beating my head against a wall that I was never meant to scale. And I think that's something else that a lot of people can understand is, especially in this economy, when so many people are struggling to hang on to houses or holding on to the dream of buying a house someday. I mean, my family and I have been very, very lucky in that respect. But I know that again, it's luck that has helped us a lot. And my family and it's been luck that's really helped us the most. And that
Well, I
itself.
think with most artists, it was luck that helped them. Like a lot of people, they got their gig. Even if they're amazingly talented. Like I remember my art teacher in art school telling me, he's like, "Who do you like?" And I'm like, "I like Frank Frazetta a lot." And he goes, "Well, for every Frazetta, there are probably 10 people just as talented or more talented that never made it."
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, no, totally. I remember being in high school. The reason that it's to give you a little more background about myself is I have a bachelor's in sociology and an MBA in business administration. And the reason that I went for that is because in high school, I had made the mistake of listening to counselors and other family members telling me that, being an author was incredibly hard and there was no guarantee that I would ever make it. And if I tried for it, if I tried to become an author full time and I didn't make it, my only other option was teacher. So it's yeah, there are unfortunately, especially in the publishing industry, when you're dealing with people's slush piles and agents and querying, um, every every single masterpiece, everything that's considered a modern classic was rejected easily dozens of times before it finally got to the point that it's considered a modern classic. And the frightening part about all of that is the fact that if this is true, if every single one of these classics, J.K. Rowling's, the Harry Potter from to The Shining, Carrie,
Yeah,
Chicken Soup for the
wasn't
Soul.
J.K. Rowling living like on her friend's couch and like she
Yes,
was broke and she was like living off the system. Now she's like the richest woman in the UK, maybe the world. I don't know.
yes, absolutely. The all of these works, if this is true, that all of these works were rejected dozens of times, and J.K. Rowling talked about her early days about she mailed out one of the only copies of her manuscript to a publisher. The publisher rejected it and didn't return the manuscript, so she only had like one other copy left to hand out. She couldn't afford to be able to make a new copy of this thing.
Right.
So the yeah it's if all of that is true, then it stands to reason that in the slush piles and for every agent, publisher, magazine, or whatever, are masterpieces, like real legit great stories that are never found because either the agent or the publisher just wasn't interested in that topic at the time or had seen a similar topic to it that
Or he had a
first.
bad day or something. Like,
Exactly. Yes, they had a bad day. They got
like
into
you
an
find
argument.
stuff like great shows like Firefly that were canceled because of like some weird corporate change up. It
Hmm.
wasn't unpopular. It wasn't anything like
No.
that. It was well received. It was like highly critically liked.
Yes. I mean, eventually, thankfully, I mean they were able to bring the show back, at least for the movie, if I remember correctly. And I know,
Serenity, yeah.
yeah, and I know that I think there's been further comic books that have continued the story as well. I haven't read those, but yes, it's the vagaries of the industry are such that it can be very, very discouraging for a lot of writers and a lot of newbies wanting to start out. I think I just commented or I gave some encouragement to another writer on Twitter just earlier today who said that she sat down and she queried an agent who like they basically checked all of the boxes with each other. Like they had everything. Like she had the project that this agent was looking for. The two of them had a lot of very similar interests. It seemed like they really got along very well. And she ended up getting rejected. And she's like, I'm done. Why am I doing this? Why am I beating my head against the wall to be able to do this? And I had a similar experience myself. I found an agent that it like based on her interests and how love of poetry, love of horror, love of the talking about like the not the insecurities but the gap in terms of the American dream, the financial troubles in terms of the American dream. We basically checked all of the boxes straight down. Never heard back from her. So it's yeah, the
Well, they're probably looking for what sells because at the end of the day, it's just like what's going to pay my bills. But the
Mhm.
problem is you have lots of stuff that's going to sell tremendously, but there's nothing like it out there. Like even if you look at bands like Guns N' Roses, nobody thought that would ever do anything. A year
Mhm.
later, they try it out and it becomes one of the best-selling bands in the world. But it's
Yes.
be like since they hadn't seen a band like that sell before, they're like, yeah, we're not going to try it.
Yeah. I think it was the movies that made us. We were talking about, I know this is a strange aside, but Elf, the Christmas movie with Will Ferrell. It's become one of my favorites. And I know it's definitely my wife's favorite, but they talked about trying to make that movie and they remember telling me, it's like, you are crazy if you think that Will Ferrell can be the lead in anything. And yeah, it's the, yeah, it, trying to pin down what's going to sell and what isn't is even when you feel like you've got something that really is marketable, there's still no guarantee. I remember talking, or no, not talking to, but listening to a webinar given by an literary agent from one of the mid-tier publishers, and he said that it was a couple of years ago, they had a book that they were super excited about. They were like, "Oh my God, this is like so unique, and it's also marketable. It's something totally sellable that we can absolutely, and we're going to build a big campaign behind it." And they did. They built this giant campaign behind it, launched it out into the world, and it fell out of the sky like a clay pigeon.
Right.
Meanwhile,
It
another
seems to
book,
happen all the time
it
too.
does. Yes, yes. And then, meanwhile, another book on their roster that they hardly touched at all went straight up the charts. And all of them sat back and just like, that one, really? Okay. So, win's a win, but none of them could explain why. And I think that's one of the hardest things to come to grips with in terms of publishing, or whether it's publishing or art or movies or whatever, is no one is capable of explaining to you why something works and why something doesn't. No one. Even the industry experts are really just guessing because all of them have had things that fell out of the sky dead and can't really explain to them why it happened at the time or it didn't. So it's as scary as that may be for anyone who's listening, anyone who wants to break into whatever industry you want to break into. If it's publishing, great. If it's artwork, if it's movies, if it's poetry, whatever. Yeah, it's a double-edged sword because no one can tell you why things work and why they don't. But if you go into it understanding that and you keep pushing, then you might be end up being one of the ones that work by just sheer bullheaded stubbornness.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think persistence is the key, and I understand the whole like you need something to back up, but that doesn't mean give up on your dream.
No.
Like H.R. Geiger, famous artist. I mean, he died recently, unfortunately, but
Mm-hmm.
he was a famous artist in Europe, and then Ridley Scott used it for the designs for Alien, and then became even more famous. But
Mm-hmm.
his dad said, hey, I know you want to be an artist, but that's not guaranteed money. So why don't you major in architecture? So like if you look at his landscapes, they're like amazing perspective and everything. So
Okay.
that was his backup was architecture, and it gives you the freedom to pursue your vision.
Yeah.
Like I tattoo, I own a tattoo shop, and that gave me the freedom because like I interviewed with DC Comics, and they're very, very restricted, especially when you first come on. Like they only want you to draw superheroes and stuff like that. So like I can do what I want to do if I don't have to worry about rent. So I
Mm-hmm.
understand that. Like I know a lot of it, like independent authors, they do the same sort of thing. They have like the job that pays the bills and they just keep plodding at it. And eventually, if you're there, eventually it's going to pick you up. Even if they're just annoyed, you won't leave them alone. They'll pick you up.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite stories about Leonardo da Vinci and why the Mona Lisa is as famous as it is because if you read about the Mona Lisa and you find out very quickly that there's a lot that's wrong with the picture. I mean, there's like genuine like basic art techniques that are wrong in the Mona Lisa. but it's still the most famous or most recognized painting in the world. And my favorite story as to why that happened, and I have no idea if this is actually really true. I don't know, but my favorite story was the reason that the Mona Lisa was the is as famous as it is because Leonardo da Vinci would not shut up about it. he basically, everywhere that man went, according to the story, everywhere that man went, he carried the Mona Lisa, because the Mona Lisa itself is very small. I think it's barely even bigger than my computer screen. So
Okay.
yeah, but he would carry the Mona Lisa with him, and anytime he stopped to talk with anybody, he would point to that picture and he would say, "This is me. This is my best work. This is me at my best." And he just would not shut up about it. And that's why it's considered the most recognizable piece of art on the planet. So it's, yeah, sheer bloody-minded stubbornness
Yeah.
is, yeah.
No, I agree. I've seen that happen with like everything from art to music or writing, like, and even people like Frank Miller, who's famous now because he wrote like The Dark Knight and all that sort of stuff. Sin City, did a lot of classics.
Yes.
But I remember he started out living in Brooklyn, like basically living in poverty because he was living in Harlem and could barely afford rent. And the writer on Daredevil quit. She was like, "I can write." So then they took him on, and that did it. Like that broke him out of the mold. You just got to keep at it, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And the difficulty, at least for me, from my perspective, is I know that they talk about having a backup plan and the like, and my difficulty, at least with that, is that the debt that you incur trying to do, or even just like the psychological baggage that you end up with incurring on trying to find something that you can do while you're still continuing to work on something that you really want to do. So
something that doesn't drain your soul.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I wish, if I had gone back, if I had changed, majors and talked about different things, I probably wouldn't have the same perspective today as I do on, the American dream, toxic masculinity, all of these things. I don't know, so I understand why I'm here, but I still can't think, about, my student loans, about the bloviating professors, the guys that would talk for an hour and say absolutely nothing of consequence. Right. I can't look back and remember all of that without thinking that I wish I had done.
Do you still owe student loans?
Oh yeah, still owe student loans. Yeah, so I'm hoping to eventually get rid of them. But yes, but at the moment, it's something that definitely weighs on my mind. It's like basically like taking out a mortgage, basically, on your educational career. And I went back, I got my MBA to be able to put myself a bit further afield from other candidates, for other, positions that I might apply for and the like. But I regretted it every single stretch that I was there. I hated almost every single class I took for it, but it was something that I thought that I could put towards the widest branch of jobs that I would apply for. So my parents would like me to remember that it's definitely come in handy, but I if I had to do it over again, I would never do it. It absolutely made me miserable.
So is that what you focused on in college?
The MBA, no, what I focused on in college was sociology. Again, if I had my druthers, if I had really stuck to my guns when I was younger, as I would have probably gone for like an MFA, Master of Fine Arts in writing, really. But in college, I really fell in love with sociology, the idea of understanding why people as social groups react the way that they do, and being able to make some predictions based on how people will act in any given situation, how people will cater to certain trends as it's going along. And I had actually tried to see if I could get a master's degree in sociology, but I went to one of my other gripes about higher education is I went to both the guidance counselor for the juniors at my college and the guidance counselors for the sociology department. And I said, well, here's what it is that I do for a living. Here's what I'm thinking I can, I would like to do. Here's where I would like my career, my day job to go. But how can I use sociology? Because sociology is an incredibly broad topic. It can literally frog hop into any field in imagination. Like you could get into law from there. You could get into you could get into politics from there. You could get into even like some forms of medicine from there. It's incredibly broad. But the both of the guidance counselors, I asked them, where can I take this? Where can I go with this? And both of them looked at me and said, I don't know. Here's some pamphlets. Go figure it out.
My guidance counselor, well, in high school, I eventually went to college, but my guidance counselor in high school said, get ready for a career of pumping gas because that's all you ever do.
Yeah. It's like seriously, are you actually trying to help me, or are you just trying to kill me slowly?
Yeah. Well, I think it was also in the South. That looked super punk rock. I'm sure that had a lot to do with it. They're like, yeah, this guy's a lost cause,
Mm-hmm.
But so let's go back to your book for a minute. So, is being a writer what you've done consistently? Is that more of like something that you've like, ventured into and tried to really get out there recently?
It's something that's always been with me for as long as I can remember. I mean, I remember writing poetry when I in grammar school, in early grade school, writing poetry, and then as I got older, I tried doing like short stories, and I think I vaguely remember trying to put a comic book together, like when I was very, very young. But let me see.
I've had a lot of people trying to get me to illustrate a comic book that they write that will make money when it sells. I'm like, no,
Yeah,
that's not gonna happen.
it's definitely difficult to get there. Yes, no, it's writing has been my passion for as long as I can remember, and it's been within the last few years that I really have tried everything that I can to make it into a career for myself. I mean, I write online a lot, and I say it's like full-time writer town or bust for me. That's what that's my dream, is to get to that point. I think it was Dean Koontz who had said that he was 42 when he finally got a book deal that was sufficient enough where he could quit his day job and move into writing full time. I'm 40 at the moment, so I'm hoping to be able to either beat him or or at least like get somewhere around that area, because my day job is hectic. But
have you heard or read Stephen King's On Writing?
no, I haven't. I know it's probably one of the most seminal books that people have talked about. I have not read it at all. No.
Well, the first like large segment of it just seems to be about his life. I was like, that's cool, but it's not really. There are no writing, tricks or techniques or anything. But then he does a deep dive into it, so it actually is really, really insightful. But he talks about like barely making it, having a new wife with a new kid, and you don't know where the rent's coming from, know where the food's coming from, and then finally Carrie sells. And they call him up and they tell him, and he makes him repeat how much money he's getting paid for it. But yeah, it took him forever. He just like battled in the trenches till he got there.
Yeah. It takes a long, long time, and it's doggedness and dealing with discouragement, dealing with depression. Me personally, I deal with depression a lot, and with my book, it was. Yeah, that was the culmination of 10 years of my life. It took me 2 years to write it, and then another 7 years pitching it before I finally found a home for it in Darkstroke Books. And I really can't thank them enough for all of the help, and as helpful as they have been, because I had queried, I forget however many agents, it was easily several dozen agents about the book over the course of those 7 years. And I was actually just about ready to give up querying and just self-publish the book, because I'd been self-publishing some short stories and some novellas at that time. And I decided, I had heard about an author or I'd seen an author talking about her experience with Darkstroke online, and I decided to check into it. And they seem reputable. They are a hybrid publisher, which means that they will put the book together, but the marketing and promotion is really on the shoulders of the author. So
well, it kind of is no matter what, unless you're like Stephen King.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's the one of an anecdote I'll share in a second is one of the things that I have come to learn, at least from having such a broad range of genres that I'm interested in, genres that I have a passion for. I've talked with a number of writers, and they've said over especially in the last number of years, is that the common knowledge for writing is that if you get accepted to one of the major publishers, is that the publisher is going to take care of everything. They're going to publish the book, create the campaign, put everything together, launch it out into the world. And you really just have to show up and talk about it, do like interviews and stuff like that. And that's not true.
That might have been more true way back in the day, but definitely not now.
Yeah, exactly. Now what happens is that the publishers really only build a big campaign behind one or two of the books on their roster, the ones that they feel are the most marketable and the easiest to sell. The others,
if it doesn't sell, they drop you like a hot potato.
Exactly. Yeah. And the rest falls on the shoulders of the author. So it's up to the author to try to get the podcasts and set up the interviews, get the reviews, all these things. So it was dealing with a hybrid publisher. I realized it's like, if I'm going to end up having to do all of this work, if I do manage to finally get my foot in the door at a major publisher, if I'm going to end up having to do this all anyway, I might as well work with the hybrid publisher and just dive right in and get my feet wet. It's definitely been a huge learning curve for me, but setting up for reviews, querying reviewers is just as hard as querying agents, which is just as hard as querying publishers.
Oh, I know. I know.
Yeah. Query setting up
tons of people to give you a positive response. You don't know if that's genuine or not, because then you never hear from them again. Or they say, send me stuff, and you send them stuff, and then again you never hear from them again.
Yeah. Of the over 50 reviewers that I did finally that I reached out to, most of them, at least the major ones, never responded. And of the two that did respond, and I got a number, I've had a number of very lovely reviews online that I'm very thankful for, but I remember two of the reviewers that I had the best relationships with were Ginger Nuts of Horror, which is a major UK site, and
I know them. They've reviewed some of my stuff before. It's awesome.
Yeah, no, they're great guys. They're really, really great people. But the other one that I talked to was Cemetery Dance, which is something that another major love of mine. I've had a number of their magazines.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've had a number of magazines of theirs for a long time, and both of them wrote back to me, but they both said the exact same answer. They said, look, we really appreciate this, but we got to be honest, our reviewers' plates are kind of full right now. We'll send the book around to people and ask them if they've got any time, if they have any interest in being able to take this on. But if they don't, don't take any personally, because, they really, they're full. They really don't have the time. So I never heard back from the reviewers. So it really speaks to how many queries and how many books, then manuscripts that reviewers, agents, publishers, magazines, websites get at any given time. So trying to get your foot in the door is a major numbers game, and trying to get yourself is a major numbers game, and just trying to be consistent, trying to get yourself out there as much as possible, and just keep working on your next book. I'm coming up on a year of A Man in Pieces, which again has been my book baby. It's the first book that I ever published, and I think I will go to my grave saying that it's my best work, because it is absolutely my most personal story. It's got all of my nightmares in it. But I'm also right now, I have been working with the Horror Writers Association mentorship program. I've been working with a lovely writer named David Niall Wilson, and he's
I know him. He's my publisher.
Yes.
Press, yeah.
Yes. No, I've been working with him on a novella that I have been shepherding. It's called Somewhere Quiet, Full of Light, and it's about a sentient haunted house. And that's we're coming to the end of the mentorship program now. It's going to be and it's supposed to end, I think, in another week or so. But I've gotten some really great feedback from him, and I've been able to tighten up the story a lot. So I'm hoping that, you know, to be able to shop that around and be able to see some further growth of my writing career with that as well. So because the lot of the a lot of the things that I touch on in A Man in Pieces, which is like the stoicism, the dealing with not poverty, but worries about poverty, fears about money, fears about achieving something, achieving a level of success, buying the home, all these things that are part of the American dream. Part of that is still in Somewhere Quiet, Full of Light. It's more about the downfalls of aspiration, of constantly trying to go for more and be seen as being more than you actually are. So it's that, and it's like I said, it's written through, or part of it is written through the point of view of Ascension Haunted House. So it was a joy to write, and I'm hoping that it will take me that much closer to full-time writer town.
Have you seen Office Space?
Yes, I have. Yes.
Is it a little bit like that, but more horror?
Yes, it is. You could totally say that. Yes, you take away the laugh track in Office Space, and you've really just got the desperation and the not even quiet desperation, the real desperation, and it's just soul wrenching, just drudgery that you're dealing with. The vapid bosses, the backstabbing
Yeah, I'm
coworkers.
gonna need
Yeah,
you to come in. Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
I
Yes,
love that the place gets burned down over a stapler.
yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's yeah. I mean, it does. In my book, nothing gets burned down. Unfortunately, it would be. I should have probably written about having things going out in flame and glory, but it does. It ends in bloody. It ends in blood and violence, and because that's the way that I see it really
Oh,
going.
that's
And
awesome. Yeah,
I'm
I know
sorry.
Stephen King. I said that's awesome. I know
Thank you.
Stephen King saw his like movie adaptation of The Mist, and like in the ending of The Mist, I'm not going to give you any spoilers, but it's a lot darker than anything he wrote. But he
Yes.
saw that, he goes, "I wish I thought of that ending."
Yes. No, I remember that. Yes. And I'd read The Mist as well before. I think I read The Mist. I don't remember if I read it before or after I saw the film, but I remember him talking about the ending and saying it's like, I wish I had written it that way. And yeah, that was definitely something as well for me, because the the book Man of Pieces is very much bleak, because I wanted to take all of the nightmares that I had and take them to their ultimate extension as much as and because if anybody is looking for any kind of hope, or Hartford, as it ends in The Mist. Again, I don't want to give too much away about the Mist, because it is a great story and everything. But if you're looking for any kind of happy ending, it's definitely not in The Man in Pieces. But I think that's one of the essences of horror, and that's what scares us the most, is the idea that things will end badly because of poor choices, or no choices, or just bad decisions.
Well, I think that dark ending actually. I know that Stephen King, I love like the middle part of his writing.
Mhm.
Where he like develops a story and develops the personalities and everything. But it seems like he has a bit of trouble with the ending, and
Mhm.
I really like that dark nihilistic ending.
Mm-hmm. No, I totally get that too. Yes, one of my favorite, the first book I ever stole was his a copy of Night Shift. It was
Ever
actually,
stole.
yeah. I stole it from my mother. I don't
Okay.
know. I was way too young to get into Stephen King at the time, but I fell in love with the cover art of the paperback at the time. And it was the first book I ever stole, and I hid it on my bookshelf for a while before my mother finally stole it back. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. It's yeah. I go back and I look at some of the stories that he had written that I had loved growing up, and you see, yes, the ending is not always easy to be able to nail, and I know even King really struggles with that at times. I think what was it? It was a story about gentleman who, no, a teacher who had to fight off the schoolyard bullies and that came back from the grave to haunt him again. I do not remember the title off the top of my head, but I remember getting to the end of this and like, yeah, great story, and it still
Right.
was one of my favorites. But the ending is just like, eh. So yeah, I I've read a number of King's books. I've loved them over the years. My biggest issue with King is just, I think one of my biggest issues that I have with, again, strange aside, is with epic fantasy. You get into like Tolkien, or you get into George R.R. Martin, and you're dealing with just an overwhelming amount of details. And I think
Right.
that's one of King's Achilles heels. Is like I tried to read Under the Dome, and I got to the passage that I think it went on for like 6 or 7 pages about a beaver that was just toddling about its day when the dome came down and cut it in half. And I'm not spoiling anything for anybody. In case anyone's wondering, I think that's only within the first 100 pages of the book itself. But I got to the point about the beaver. And I'm like, no, I can't keep doing this. I can't keep going. I can't do it. Now, other stories of his that I have loved. I mean, The Shining, I have absolutely fell in love with. Let's see, Salem's
I
Lot.
know he's not a fan of the movie adaptation, but that is my favorite movie of all time.
It is absolutely, yes. And the I know he had said that, I know he's had a number of gripes about it over the years. He'd said he didn't like the fact that Jack Torrance, or oh my God, Jack Nicholson's character started out as crazy, and
Right. Yeah, I've heard that too. But I
went
mean,
from
that's what you
there.
need in a 2 hour movie. It's not like a Netflix series that goes for 8 episodes and slowly builds it up.
Yeah, no, you have to truncate it. And Jack Nicholson was the perfect casting for Jack Torrance. He really
Yeah.
was. You couldn't get better than that. But I know he'd also said, he didn't like how cold everything was. I think he compared the movie to a beautiful car that didn't have an engine in it, and because he didn't feel like it had any real heat or heart to it. I know he's the author, and it's very difficult to deal with like adaptations of your own personal work. So I get why I get that. But yeah, The Shining is, I feel, absolutely has heart, because it's really wrapped up with Danny and I want to call her Olive, no, Winnie, the mother, and it's really wrapped up in their story, is really the heart of everything. And watching Jack quite quickly fall into psychosis it's a beautiful story. It really is, and it's quite frightening.
I think going back to what you said about this is probably going to be your favorite story forever. You might alter that a little bit as you progress as a writer, because I've noticed, like, I put out 3 books and a bunch of short stories now, and my writing, I think, is way better now than it was then. Like, you just do it so often, you get more of a fluidity towards everything.
No, totally, yes. I mean, and yeah, I will probably end up eating these words later. I definitely will, because there's other stories that I'm planning to write that are gnawing at me at the back of my mind, and it's like, okay, this could be really great. This could be something that I could really have a lot of fun playing with. And as I'm
The
and
kind of horror based.
yeah, some of them, yes, some of them are, further down the line. My hope is to, because I've queried for children's books. I've self-published stories in a number of genres. My hope is to, because the preponderance of my stories are really in horror. And my hope is to build a name, become a name basically in horror, and use that as a launching pad to be able to branch out into further genres from there. It's like, okay, I'm established as a horror writer. People know that people are following me, sales are picking up and the like, and to be able to use that to go and, okay, if you like this, follow me over here. I've got this story that I think that you'll really like, that has some elements of it, but it's not a typical like science fiction or typical fantasy story. So like I said, I will probably, well, I'll say definitely eat my own words eventually when I publish the next book or the one beyond it. I think it's just the reason I have such a deep affection. Why I say that it's, my best work is because I put a lot of myself into A Man in Pieces, and I put a lot of my own nightmares into it, and it is my first published work, so will definitely always hold a special
So
place
some
in
of
my
the
heart for it.
thematic elements resonate so strongly with you that you would say, that it really feels like a personal individual, accomplishment.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. It's just getting to this point has been a long road, and and finally having just the one book published and being able to move and being able to use that to keep moving down the road has been such a joy for me, and so eye-opening in a lot of ways for myself. And the so it's my dream is to keep building the road, keep going from A Man in Pieces, move on to Somewhere Quiet, Full of Light. I'm actually transcribing and in the midst of editing another. I'm not sure if it's going to be a novella or a novel, but it's a slasher that's moving from there. I've got let me see, some ideas down for a middle grade horror novel in my head. I actually have a children's horror novel in my, or horror book, children's horror story percolating in my head as well. So that I've got some of
I
it written
remember
down for.
I talked to Jeff Strand about doing like children, young adults, that sort of thing. And
Great
I was like,
author. Yeah.
I,
Mhm.
I feel like a lot of people when they do young adults or they do something for children, they kind of talk down to you.
Mhm.
It's like they simplify the language. A lot of the stuff just seems like they dumped it down. And
Mhm.
Jeff is saying the way he gets around that is he doesn't try and talk down to you like a child's going to read it. He tries to talk through the voice of a child,
Mhm.
like everything's happening the way a child would perceive it. But you don't have to be a child to read it.
No, no, and that's absolutely great. Is because and again, Jeff Strand, great author. He's probably one of the I can't think of another author that will scare you and make you laugh your ass off as much as he can. But he's absolutely right. And the characters are what draw us into the story, I think, more than anything else. And I know that there are readers out there who prefer like a certain form when it comes to writing, a certain others who prefer experimentation. I totally get that. I understand. But for me personally, it's the characters that speak to you. It's the characters you want to return to and pull you in. So, and it's definitely the characters that you want to start with. So if you're dealing with kids, or and um, writing it from the children's perspective is brilliant, because it's you're not talking down to people, because I think you're having a kid who understands that he's being talked down to, because I think every person on the planet has that point, or has that memory when adults around them were discussing something, and they said, oh, this isn't for you, or it's like, okay, go on, Timmy, what, this is adult talk, this isn't for you right now. And it's like, I'm 15, or
Which makes
I'm
you want to
10.
hear it even more.
Yeah, exactly. You
Like
want to
they
hear it
found
even
that with
more.
like the PMRC label and stuff like that. Like the minute they slap a label on it, it sells twice as much,
Hmm.
maybe more than that. Like I read, I don't know if you read the book, The Dirt, the Motley Crue story,
No. Oh,
and
yeah. Mhm.
it's not one of the members of the band. It's like I think one of the roadies talking about like everything on. So he
Hmm.
spills the beans on everything. But the funny thing is, so they got a hold of Nikki Sixx when with their next album was coming out, and they said, yeah, we have to slap a PMRC label on it. And he's like, well, what does it say? Said, well, it says extreme this, extreme that. He's like, slap that on. And that was Dr. Feelgood. That was their best selling album.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah. It's yeah. The warnings and the labels that they put on, yeah, they had I think it was Tipper Gore who
Yeah.
who helped to spearhead all of the labels in music, and it was, yeah,
Helped
it had the
so many
exact opposite
albums
effect.
sell so much better.
Hmm.
Little did she know.
Yeah, yeah. It's yeah. It's. I think a lot of people want to, or forget as we get older, and I think it's for myself and everybody. As we get older, we forget how much things meant to us when we were kids, and or how important things were to us when we were kids. Because you get older and you deal with much more. conflict, you deal with much more amorphous complications and problems. You deal with a mortgage, you deal with a sick friend, a sick relative, a sick loved one, you deal with a bad job, you deal with all these different things. So when you were younger, all you really wanted was to be included. All you really wanted was to be respected and to have your opinion count for something. So slapping a warning label, telling people that, okay, this is way too high over your head. This isn't for you. That's like catnip. It's like, you will go after that immediately because you want to be included.
It's like teenager catnip. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You want to be included in that. You want to see what they don't want you to see. And every teenager, every kid has done that. I mean, I understand.
Well, I think what helped break gangster rap was fuck the police by NWA, and like you had Charlton Heston protesting against it. That just made it sell more.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, it's anytime that you step in and you want to say this isn't appropriate for children, or our whatever it is, or I think that this should be banned. You're just basically you're planting a flag at whatever it is that you're trying to bury. You're just basically saying it's like, this is really bad. We shouldn't be dealing with this. Everybody crowds around you. It's like, I want to see what this thing is.
Yeah. Well, I noticed even when I put up artwork, like some of my artwork will have nudity in it, and like so you have to tag this like for mature. Viewers only.
Yes.
Like 10 times as many people look at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For people, I remember when I was in high school, my English professor, one of my favorite English teachers, he was talking about a student election that had happened a couple of years before we had come to the school. And he had said that the guy who was running for class treasurer, I don't remember his name, but everyone was putting up little signs and banners in the auditorium, or the cafeteria to say, vote for me, vote for whoever or whatever. He put up this enormous banner stretched across the wall, and all it said in big red letters was sex. That was it. Then everybody crowded around to see what it said, and in little tiny letters it said, see, now that I've got your attention, vote for blah 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 blah. And he won by a landslide.
Oh, that's clever. Yeah.
Yeah, you get people's attention. You tell people that they're, especially kids, you tell something that this isn't appropriate, or something that is, and for parents, and I'm a parent myself, you want to do your best to try to protect your kids from the more toxic elements of life. I mean, but you can't stop people from going after you can't stop people forever. You can't stop them from going after what they want. So just, hanging a flag or trying to restrict it from being out in the world, it just makes it that much more tantalizing to others.
Yeah. I think, I mean, there's like I think like my dad's super religious, so they have like that Christian morality thing. But I think the more you shield people from something, the more they find like the bad elements of it. So, they tend to get twice as bad as what you're like, trying to prevent them from just by shielding them from it.
Yeah. Or what ends up happening, or it's been my experience, because I grew up in Catholic school, and and some members of my family were very religious as well. And what ends up happening is either it's been my experience that when it comes to things that they don't want you to see or they don't want you to have, for you, it goes either one of two ways. Either you dive right into whatever it is that you want to find, and you get yourself in trouble, or you stay away from it so much that you end up repressing parts of yourself, and it becomes that's also just as dangerous, because repressing the parts of yourself that people deem as not healthy, people deem as not right, especially when it comes from a religious background. And I grew up Catholic. I still, we go to church we go to church every day. I pray every day, and I'm a bisexual man. I know that, how odd this all sounds, but I think I still have a faith in things, because I come to understand that when you try to repress who you are, every other part of you curdles over time. And you need to experience every part of yourself, and you need to experience the things that you want to experience. So being afraid, or being made to be afraid of yourself, or being made to be afraid of the world, is no way to go through life.
I think the Catholic Church is probably the last person you would learn sexuality from.
Very true. Yeah, very, very,
But
very true.
that's a different story entirely.
Yes, no, absolutely true. Yes, very, very, very true. I think I read an essay online from a woman. She's let me see, she was a gay woman who had written about the fact that, she grew up Catholic or Christian. She was very religious when she was raised to be super, super religious when she was younger, and she was when she was younger. But as she grew older, as she grew to understand who she was, she fell out of faith with the faith. And then eventually, as time went on and she started experiencing a lot of life struggles, a lot of, there was passing of friends, loss of family members, and she came back to the faith. And now it was like, when she was younger, it was like, okay, my relationship, it's like talking about your relationship status. She's basically saying, it's like, my relationship with religion right now it's complicated. And I think it's similar to myself as well. I was raised Catholic. I was very much into the religion when I was younger. I fell out of it as I got older because of boredom, to be perfectly frank. And then as life's travails, as problems came and went, I came back to the faith. And then now my relationship with it is complicated. So it's Catholicism is not the place that you want to talk about like sexual orientation or something like that.
Right.
Not the place to really to learn about it. I will definitely say that. But that's how your faith or my faith and everything is something that everybody has to decide on their own. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't even know if it's faith so much as the way you look at the world. Like, when I was a little kid, I used to have to go to church 4 times a week,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Either you had 2 choices: either you could read the Bible, or you could listen to the pastor. So since the pastor always talked about the same thing, I've read the Bible like 12 times.
Okay.
Which is why I'm an atheist, but that's another story entirely.
I get it. Yeah, I totally get it.
Yeah, it's like I think you need to come to the way that you perceive reality and the way that you explain everything in your head. And the last thing you want is other people to tell you this is what you got to think.
Yeah. It's. I mean, I ran into that when I was younger, because of how I was raised in the church, and also how I was raised in the family. I came to that, as I got older, even just in my own secular life, how I approached the career and the education that I sought, because I took the advice of people that were supposed to be guiding me, and it ended up throwing me off. So,
Right.
or at least it feels that way. And so I'm now trying to claw my way back, or claw my way towards it in my own way, one book at a time. So
there are a million different opinions, perspectives anyway. So it's kind of like any one person that says that they're the arbiter of truth is probably lying.
Yeah, no, that ain't the fact. Yeah, that ain't. No, there are so many people with opinions, so many people who say that they are, as you put it, that they are the arbiter, and they are probably lying, and they're either lying, or they're selling something, or they are both. They're lying to sell you something.
They're used car salesmen that sells religion. They're Joel Epstein, or Olstein. Is it Olstein? Yeah. The guy who was all like $1 million, palaces, but refused to let people in when the hurricanes hit, and again, that's another story. So I don't want to keep you here all day, but I have a couple more questions.
Of course.
One, I noticed in school, it's kind of like most people who want to focus on writing take English, or they take they might take some sort of history or mythology class, but I took some creative writing classes. you
Hmm.
know, but we didn't really have much available besides that. I took a little bit more when on the art side because art offered like illustration, oil painting, and stuff like that. But what were you thinking and what were you looking at?
When I was younger, if I had done things differently, I would have probably gone for an MFA, a Master of Fine Arts. I would have gone for creative writing and English. If I think if I can look back, and again, hindsight is 2020, and I can dream all I want. I can't. You can't go back, and I wouldn't be the same person I am if I could go back and do it over again. I wouldn't have the same family it is that I have if I could go back and do it over again. But I would have gone for creative writing, and I probably would have ended up, if I didn't become a full-time author at the time, I probably would have ended up in some form of publishing, whether it's editing or no, not proofreading maybe, but like something having to do with editing. I think probably would have been
Or
my
ghostwriting, maybe?
maybe, yeah, maybe. It would have been something that I would have gone for really, because writing has always been my passion for as long as I can, as long as I have a memory, it's always been my companion for me.
Well, I noticed in the art and like the creative writing and the English classes, you get some people who they have their own perspective on how everything should be, and
Hmm.
they're hypercritical of everything, not whether it's good or bad, but hypercritical of everything that doesn't fit into their little box. And you have
Hmm.
some people they just want you to thrive, and they say as long as you like put the effort in and you're doing good work, whether it's what I would do personally, is still good. Did you run into that at all?
When I was, I've you run into people that are definitely there for you and try to and be there for you as much as you can. And then the interesting thing, at least with writing for me personally, is I've run into the one of the worst and best writing advice that I'd ever received was with one of my first anthology exceptions. The I had written a story. It wasn't in horror. It was erotica at the time, but I had written a story and I'd sent it into a publisher, and the publisher wrote back to me and said that he liked the story, but it was amateurishly overwritten. He said it was you were um, you've done so many things. The bare bones of it is good, but the rest is just you got to cut off so much of this. And he sent me like 2 or 3 pages of writing, and with it was just red marks, just red pen throughout it. And he said, "This is follow this template." And he said, "If you can follow this template and apply it to the rest of the manuscript, if you're capable of cleaning it up, then I might accept it." And I hated that man inside of a paragraph, but I hated him even more when I went back and realized that he was right. That I had overwritten a lot of the story. So I went
A lot
back.
of early authors do that. They overwrite.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh yes, yes. You don't even realize that you're doing it because you're trying to hammer home a point, and it takes time for you to realize that you need to trust the reader. And I think that's one of the hardest lessons for a lot of people to come to grips with, is that you've got to trust the reader's imagination to follow you along with what you're saying, and not like hit them over the head with all of your words. But yeah, I went back, I cut out the extraneous writing, and I resubmitted it, and he accepted it, and it was great. The problem was that not long after he accepted it, the publisher of the anthology went belly up, and so the anthology never saw the light of day. So, but it was definitely one of the most frustrating experiences I have ever had, but it was also one of the best writing experiences I have ever had, because it gave me an idea as to what dealing with some editors are definitely like, and what dealing with the publishing industry can be like. And so it's something that I took to heart. And as far as like other supporters, when I was younger, let me see. In high school, I really liked the creative writing classes. I really liked them, and I had a lot of fun with them at the time. But I don't remember anyone really sticking up and saying, you should try this for a career. You should try, push for this going forward. That was really, I think that was both myself and my and some family members of mine, wanting, saying that I should give this a try. And
you did.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. And I'm still going at it. And I'm
Well,
happy.
everybody should try for the dream. Whether they make it or not, they should at least try.
Exactly. Yes. Yes, definitely. I mean, it's a long road. It is not an easy one, but it has been wildly happy for me to see my baby out in the world and to know that, and I'm hoping to eventually not only move to full-time Writer Town, but to have a shelf in my office that's just the copies of my own books going straight across the top, so that I can, say that this is everything that I've been, these are all the stories that I've told, these are all the things that I've accomplished, and just to have, and my hope maybe one day I'll walk into a bookstore and you'll see like King straight down on one side, Kuhn straight down on the other, and then Henry Corrigan straight down on one more shelf. I think I would appreciate that the most.
Yeah, no, that would definitely be an accomplishment. Have you heard there's Anthony Jeselnik line? And he's one of my favorite comedians. And he says everybody should try for the dream. And he said, like, his uncle, all he ever talked about, all he ever wanted to be was an astronaut, but he failed miserably. He was one of those losers on the Space Shuttle Challenger.
Okay. Yes. I get it. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Well,
but no, everyone should go for the dream. But
yes.
All right, man, let's wrap this up. But do you have anything that, like, any links you want to provide? Do you have a website?
And I don't have a website. I have a blog. It's Henry Corrigan at blogspot.com at henrycorrigan.blogspot.com. It's definitely the
Matrix is making you skip out again.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
It's probably because I'm trying to do a couple of things at once. Let me say, I'm also available on Amazon as well. The rest of my short stories and novellas that I've published. I published another novella for I self-published a horror novella about wrestling actually last year as well, and that's going to be a duology. I'm planning on writing the second half of that book in the near future. Let's see, my blog is, I try to update. It's updated very infrequently, but you can find me there. You can also find me on Amazon page as well. It's got all of the stories that I've self-published, and my book Baby, A Man in Pieces is there as well. And yeah, I'm also very much on Twitter and Facebook. I'm also the admin for the Horror Writers Collaborative on Facebook. So you can find me there. You can find me on Twitter at Henry Corrigan. You can find me just, I'm on so many social media accounts that I lose track of which ones I'm on. So you can definitely find me no matter what.
Okay, what's the best way to see what you're up to?
Definitely Twitter, I'd say, would be the best way to take a look at what I'm up to as far as publishing and what I'm, what I am publishing at any given time. There's Amazon, where you can find all of my works, and but Twitter is where I'm on the most, and then Facebook and the Horror Writers Collaborative, you can find me there as well.
Okay, awesome. All right, man. Well, thank you very much for doing this interview. Thanks for having the talk with me.
Thank you for having me.
And good luck in your novel.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I really